Welcome to Martial Arts Today, a program dedicated to the ancient fighting arts of the Orient, designed to give you insights into the history, philosophy, styles, and celebrities of the martial arts. And now, your host, Joe Rebelo.
Hi, this is Joe Rebelo with Martial Arts Today, and we're very fortunate to have a wonderful guest with us today, again, Mr. William Marciarelli. Mr. Marciarelli, a well-known veteran in the art of Kenpo karate and the founder of the Kachi Kenpo system. Mr. Marciarelli, it's a pleasure meeting you, sir.
Nice meeting you there, and happy to be here.
Mr. Marciarelli, again, our first question, of course, is how did you begin in the martial arts?
I started as a very young man. My grandfather stopped over from his Portuguese descent, stopped over in the island of Macau, and started picking up some of the stick fighting, Portuguese stick fighting, and the Portuguese arts. He started me as a very young man doing some tumbling and started me some self-defense. And my Uncle Raymond, who was a Korean Army veteran in Vietnam and Korea, was primarily responsible for getting me really integrated into the arts and started me off. And when I was around 6 years old, really started getting me going into the martial arts. And that's why I started with him and my grandfather. It was my basic foundation. So I started very, very young at it.
Well, what arts was he teaching you at that time?
My grandfather taught me some Portuguese stick fighting and some martial arts where it was almost similar to a dance, and he referred to it as pacadas, which meant slaps and punches in the Portuguese language. And my uncle taught me a system which was Amado, which is American way, and it was a Turkish type of self-defense, a lot of combination of different arts. And I got my black belt when I was 12 years old, and at that time was probably the youngest one registered. Since then, there's a lot of people getting them 5 and 6, etc. But at that time, I was around 12. And I started teaching shortly after that, and teaching a lot of professional people, doctors, lawyers. By the time I was 15, I had a big school going, about 200 people at 15 years old. And there wasn't many people even teaching karate. Karate was kind of unheard of until after the Korean War, where it started. And it's been very good to me. It's been really, really a way of life to me. And it's been first and foremost. And it's taken me through a lot of hard times, good times and bad times. But it seems when things are bad, I go back to my martial arts training and meditation. It's helped me. And when things are good, it really, really helped me. And I've met a lot of fine people, a lot of fine students, and fortunate to train with a lot of great masters, you know.
Well, let's go into that. Now, again, many people know you as, again, the founder of the Kachi system of Kenpo. How did you begin in the Kenpo arts?
The Kenpo arts, I started, I come out of the Marine Corps. 1961, I came out of the Marine Corps, and I became friendly with George Pizzari and Nick Cerio, and they kind of introduced me into the Kenpo style. And I became very, very friendly with them, and very friendly with Professor Cerio, who's a 10th degree now, and was really, really expanded. He's got schools all over the country and run seminars. And then I became very, very friendly and worked out continuously, 5 days a week, probably for 2 years. And he'd come to my dojo in Fall River. I would go to his dojo in Warwick on a day-to-day basis, and we worked out, and he was primarily responsible to get me right into the Kenpo system. And in 1968, him and I were fortunate enough to go and train with the world-renowned Professor William Kwai in Hawaii, Honolulu, Hawaii. And that was an experience in itself. It was really great.
Now, what was it like the first time that you had, again, taking the excursion back in '68, going to Hawaii to train with the Thunderbolt, Professor William Kwai Chow, who many consider one of the modern true masters of the art of Kenpo, who have given so much and created so much within the Kenpo arts. What was it like the first time you met him?
Well, the first time we met him, and a lot of people had tried to get to experience with him and get teaching with him. He refused a lot of people, wouldn't take everybody. And Nick and I were fortunate enough to get there. And the first time I met him, he wasn't too big of a man of stature, maybe 5 foot tall, 5'2" the most, but maybe 180 pounds, even at 60 years old, 59 when I first met him. And very intimidating, and a man of mystique and very mystery, and we were happy to be there, and very humble. We had Bible readings and meetings every day at his house. Somebody would come in and read the Bible, very religious. And we were there for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. He did absolutely nothing. he was very humble. He would serve us breakfast and cater to us, but didn't say anything about the martial arts, didn't say one word about it, didn't mention the martial arts, anything. This was why we were there. We were very apprehensive and saying, you know, we spent all this money, we want to learn the martial arts. He had us doing medial tasks like you see in these martial arts movies, sweeping floors and waxing his cars and washing the house and his car, etc. And one day, Nick and I, this is about 3 o'clock in the morning, we hear a big scream, the light goes on, he jumps in the air, he's got his gi on, he says, no, we train. And from there on, we started training. It was never-ending training, 7 days a week, 5, 6, 7 hours a day. It was amazing, you know, really amazing. He was an amazing man. His hands were all deformed with big, big calluses, and I never seen any hands like that. That's the first thing I noticed on him. And we asked him, I said, Professor, how'd your hands get like that? And he said, come here. He took us into the room. He had an anvil. He said, I've been trying to break that for 50 years, you know, jokingly. And he proceeded to bang it. And he'd whack it all kind of ways, punch it, back fist, hammers, everything. And really bang it. And it was steel. It was an anvil. And that's how his hands could all be formed by that. And it's something I wanted to do, but that was his method of training. And he said it very seriously. I've been trying to break that for 40 years, you know, jokingly, but he said it very seriously.
Well, I know that one of Bill Chun, who was one of his top students as well, was mentioning one incident he had with him when he had met Masayama, and Masayama had done his brick breaking demonstration, and he met him afterwards, and he says, well, break it. And he pointed to the broken brick, and he said, well, you mean it's broken? He says, no, break it again. And apparently he had grabbed one half of the broken brick and literally blasted it with a punch and had disintegrated the red house brick. Tell me again. Now that was the first time you had trained with him.
Yes.
What was the nature? What would you say would be the difference from what you had been learning at that time and what he was teaching? Basically, what did he go over with you?
Well, he did everything he taught was like. I was honored to be there, and so was Nick, and because here we are training one of the greatest masters in the world, and the simplest technique he would explain and define it down to the little minute move in it, and it was just great to be there with him. Everything he taught was just great, and he would later take us at that time after he jumped into the air and started training. Every day we went to dojos in Hawaii. If they dropped you off there blindfold, you would think you was in the Orient. A lot of mixed Orientals and Chinese and Hawaiians are all mixed in the dojos. We went to every dojo, I guess, on that island. Every day we'd take us to a different dojo. And he would go in there in his farmer jeans and his boots, and everybody knew him. All the masters, all the teachers knew him. Professor Chow, they'd bow. They'd bring a folding chair like this out, and he'd sit at the head of the class, and he'd say, these are my 2 students from the mainland. Bring your best fighters out. And me and Nick, and all amazing, we'd fight everybody. And some nights we'd fight 8, 10, 12 people apiece, and we'd fight them. And we'd come up all bruised, and broken ribs, and broken hands. And he did that every day for about 3 weeks. Every day he took us to the dojos. And he'd say, he'd just sit there and he'd be, good, good, good. And we'd bow and we'd leave. Nick and I'd be carrying each other out, all busted up, you know what I mean? Because he'd say, bring your best students out. These are my 2 students from the mainland. They're here to train. They will train. He'd bring them out. And then he'd go back and we'd stay up till late hours of the night. He'd be analyzing what we did wrong, what we did right, and he'd tell us. And like I say, every morning he'd serve breakfast to us. Every dinner he'd serve dinner to us. Every night he'd serve lunch, and at night he'd serve dinner to us. He'd make it with his own hand, zucchini, raw fish, and the rice, and the papayas, and everything was right there, and he'd do it for us. And every day there was Bible reading class, and Nick and I, I'm religious, but we didn't like Bible reading class 7 days a week, but we stood there every day, and he'd read, and we'd each read a passage, and kind of liked it. After a while it grew on you, But it was a really experience to be there with him. He was a great, great, great man, and the martial arts community really lost somebody, and really lost someone really dear and who expanded the martial arts. Was Professor Chow. Really started with Professor Matosi. Was his. They met together. They wrote books together. I got a book, and Matosi was Kempo, K-E-M. It was Japanese style, and Professor later on put it in the K-E-N, Kempo style. But he called his law of the fist, and it was Professor Thunderbolt. And well respected. And towards the later years, he became like Howard Yu was kind of a recluse, didn't want to speak to too many people, and didn't trust people. I think throughout the years he got hurt in a lot of business ventures with different people to try to take advantage of him and his name, and he was very, very leery of strangers. And but he was a great, great craftsman, and even at that age of 59, he was real quick, real agile, and he was an amazing individual, really amazing.
Excellent. Well, that's fantastic. I mean, we've gotten some real insight. Now, when you had returned after that time, you had become very much involved in the karate tournament circuit, and at one time had won the grand championship for the Karate Referees Association in New England. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What enticed you to get into tournaments?
Well, I had been Golden Glove champ. I'd been Marine Corps boxing champion, and I fought a lot of tournaments and did well when I was in the Marine Corps. And I came back out here and I won. I think when I won the New England, I think I was 28. I'd come out of retirement. I retired when I was about 23. I'd beaten just about everybody around. I was fortunate I could move, and what really helped me was my boxing skills, along with my karate skills. Years ago, everybody wasn't open-minded enough to combine everything, guys, they're doing today, which makes have an open door, and you have an open mind, accept and learn different things. Years ago, if it was a Shorin-ji or a Kempo style or whatever style it was, that's all the masters wanted you to teach, that's all you wanted to learn. But fortunately now everybody is picking up a little bit from everything, and they're getting along well and makes a better style. And what helped me was I was boxing and did well and came out in 28. In that tournament there, I was 20 years old when I came out. And it was George Match's Academy, and I put that on. It was New England Karate Championships. And I fought 17 times that day. It was unbelievable. It started about 8 o'clock in the morning. There was like over 600 competitors in that tournament. It was a big, big tournament. The whole Canadian team was on. I fought the whole Canadian team individually. It was about 9 of them. They fought in the black belts too. And at night, I won the middleweight championship. I was 160 pounds. So I won that, and then I went on to fight and win the heavyweight championship. I fought Ralph Bomber, which was one of the greatest around. He was in Who's Who and Black Belt magazine. I fought him for the grand championship, and I beat him. And I wound up with a trophy that was bigger than me. It was like almost 7 feet tall, a trophy I had. And it was a great, great experience. But I came back, and I wanted to see, you're like a racehorse. Even now, the older you get, you just want to see if you still got it. And I was very competitive, and I got in there, and I did well. And after that, I fought for a few more years. I probably fought till I was about 32. I quit. The last time I fought, I was about 37, 38. I fought in Bobby Cheezick's tournament in Connecticut. And I did well there, too.
Now, another thing we wanted to ask about, again, the system of Kachi, okay? How did you come up with the formulation of Kachi? And again, to explain a little bit to the general public, what is Kachi and how you came about formulating the system of Kachi?
Well, Kachi is this combination of the martial arts that I had been taught, and I got 8 black belts in 8 different styles. And what happened was, in 1965, it's probably the only martial arts ever been copyrighted. I copyrighted in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. in 1965. I had the documents on it and that. What happened is that I was looking, at that time, to get something Americanized. And Kachi means win. It's derived by Ushigashi, means win by superiority. So it means win. And I developed a Kachi Kempo system. And what I did is I indoctrinated Greco-American wrestling to boxing, to judo, jujutsu, karate, bow stick fighting, yubiwaza, finger techniques, anything I had learned, and I'm learning till this day as a foolish man that doesn't learn. You keep learning. You learn from your students. You learn from people you teach as they learn from you. But I indoctrinated all that and put it into one style, which is proven to be real, real effective and real, dominating. We used to go to tournaments. My students, if there was 28, 30 trophies, we'd come back with the lion's shares all the time. We'd maybe 25, 26, 27 trophies out of a 28, 30 possibles, and always won the best demonstration team every tournament we went to. And that particular tournament where I won the New Englands, we had about 15 teams competing, a lot of Japanese, a lot of Orientals, and a lot of American teams from all over. And we won the first place tournament and the best demonstration team. And it was a funny thing, we never practiced. It was just things we did in class. We never did practice. I'd say, who's going to a tournament today? You want to come on a demonstration team? And we did a lot of things, jump over pyramid, streamman weaves, and I used to be able to kick boards out of the air with nobody holding them, snap them, break them in the air, throw them, and jump through hoops at fire, lay on bed and nails, and all the exciting things, But it was crowd pleasing, and we won the demonstration team.
Now, again, besides the tournament atmosphere and the different aspects that you had created in the formulation of Kachi, again, when most people see the Kachi system, they notice, of course, the strong Kempo influence. How did you come up, first of all, with the design of the Kachi katas, and what exactly, how many are there, and a little bit into that?
We got 26 Kachi katas, and basically most of them I've derived myself, and I've put them together myself, and they've been around since '65, and I've taken bits and pieces from a lot of katas, a lot of moves I've moved, and like everybody knows, like, katas is an intricate part, a very important part of the martial arts, whereas shadow boxing to a boxer, get your moves into an imaginary opponent. And we have 26 of them, and some are done with bows, some are done with the size, and basically a lot of them are done with just the hands and feet and stuff. But basically, the things that I've put together, and my students have carried them on, and long after I'm gone, hopefully they'll still carry them on, but that's what they were derived by.
Now, we noticed that you also utilize a numbering system in the self-defense techniques. How many basic self-defense techniques are in the system of Kachi?
Combinations? We probably have, basically it's 52 combinations we have, and that are basic for test requirements and that, but we have over 100, 200 that we use. But basically it's 52 major ones, and then spread off into the other one, branch off.
Now, when I always noticed in the early days in Kachi training that there was always the black gi. That again, the students always start off with the black gi in the Kempo color, and another aspect that was always done, that you always did outdoor training. I noticed the students would always run outside, etc. Was that a throwback from training with Professor Chow, or was that your own idea in it?
Well, I guess a little bit of both. I guess when I was in Marine Corps, we did a lot of outside training, and I was fortunate when I was in Marine Corps. I got a Japanese karate black belt, and I got a black belt in judo off an instructor was James Bai. He was American Japanese, half and half. He was half Japanese. His mother was Japanese, father was American, and he was very fortunate to learn off Gene Rebelo, the famous judo master, and grappling techniques. So I learned a lot of grappling techniques off him, and we did a lot of outside training with him. And when I came back, we did a lot of outside training. Later, we had our own obstacle course. And I remember before we were running from Rodman Street to the Kern Mills and to the Narrows, and in snow with our gis and barefoot, and running, having people run out there. And so we did a lot of training, and you have to regulate your training now to appease the ordinary working man coming in. You don't want to hurt him. He's got to go to work the next day. When I first came out of the Marine Corps, I was taught the old system, and I had a tough school, and a lot of people got injured and didn't come back. So now you got to try to teach them well enough to protect themselves, but not to injure them. And you got to know who you can kumite with and who you can do some of the rough stuff with. But my old school at the Capitol Bowling Alley in South Main Street was a 3-decker, and I had my students for a month. I'd throw a rope out the window, so you can't come to school unless you come up that rope and you go down that rope. And that's what happened. They'd come up and go down, and if they couldn't come up or go down, they wouldn't come to class. So we had girls come up, and everybody at the end, anybody want to train, they'd come up that. And I look back now, if anybody ever fell, and God forbid they would have killed themselves, I would have been liable. But that's the type of training we had. And we'd fight in the dark, and we did a lot of outside work. We fought on horseback. We fought the old samurais with bows and arrows and with blunt tips. We did everything, and look back, we had a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun for the students who survived also, too.
Well, that's definitely some on-hands training, no doubt about it. Now, tell me, how did you come up with the creation of the name of your schools, the Temple of the Dragon? How did that all come about?
Well, I guess it was a little bit of imagination and a little bit of Professor Chow. We went there, he had I don't know if you can see the dragon on my shirt. We had our gis and had patches later on. He had a dragon similar to that. He gave us a patch, Nick and I a patch. And when I came back and I was looking for kind of a flashy name for the school, and I thought temple would be some place would be sacred, as the old masters and Buddhist monks and everything. And I said, well, what else can I get to go with? And looking in my face was a dragon the professor had given me, and it was a prized possession as everything else he had given me. And I said, I think I'll call it Temple of the Dragon. And I immediately called him up in Hawaii, and I said, what do you think about Temple of the Dragon for my school? He said, I think it's an excellent choice, good choice. He said, very good choice. So he was happy, and I was happy.
No, again, you just brought up an interesting point. Is this dragon, again, the Kempo, is that literally taken from a dragon pet from Professor Chow?
Chow had given me a dragon similar to this, and Nick, I think, is the one originally, when he came back, had it made. Nick used the same dragon as this, but he gave Nick and I each a patch. And when he gave us a diploma, he wrote it. He had his regular diplomas that were all sketched out as conventional diplomas are, but he gave Nick and I a diploma on a picture, which was maybe 3 feet. And he wrote right on it to my student, Bill Marciarelli, to my student, Nick Cerio. At that time, I got a 3rd degree, and 3rd degree black, and a book that he had written with Professor Matosi. He wrote it right on the cover. And he gave us that the day before we were leaving. We didn't expect rank, didn't expect anything. And the day before we were leaving, he came over, tears in his eyes, just wrapped up in a belt, and he gave it to us and hugged us and kissed us. And it was really, he hated to see us leave. He wanted Nick and I to stay there. He wanted Nick and I to stay there and run a dojo with him. And that was the first time I went out, 68. He was really a compassionate person, full of love and full of religion. He was a really good person, always trying to help people, and he was a remarkable individual.
Now, again, after you had the various schools in this area, again, you had been running them for easily over a decade. You had gone back to Hawaii, and you have an interesting story about the second time that you had gone back to the islands. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the second time I had gone back to the islands was in, I believe it was in '85. I took my son along. I was probably 21 at the time, I guess. And I wanted him to meet Professor Chow. How long it was going to be with some, a little relaxation, etc. and his son. And we looked all over Professor Chow. We couldn't find him. And I looked in the telephone book, and I went to dojos and said, gee, he's become a man of mystery. Nobody knows where he's at. And I felt kind of disappointed. We were there about the 4th or 5th day, where my son and I and his friend were at the beach at Waikiki Beach, and I happened to look over, and I see a guy at a distance with a broomstick with a snail in the hand, picking up papers and looking in a barrel for aluminum cans. And I said, that looks like Professor Chow. I said, no, that can't be him. He started laughing. I went over there and I said, Professor. He looked at me and he said, Billy. He hugged me and kissed me. It was him and his wife, Betty. And he said, nobody can find me, but you're a ninja. You found me, he said, right? So it was amazing. There I am, the greatest martial arts master in the world, one of the greatest. And he's picking cans, and he's a man of mystery. And from there on after, my son and I trained. And my son, who just recently passed away in June, was fortunate enough to get a black belt off him. Not many people knew he had it. He was one of the few guys in the world to get actually a black belt off Professor Chow. And I was sitting there having lunch one time, and my son was playing on the monkey bars. We were in a park. We just finished training. And he said, how come, what rank's your son? I said, he's only a brown belt. He said, how come you don't give him black belts? Because you don't want to train, and I'm not going to give it to him as a part of favoritism. I'm kind of, as most people, the relatives or members of family, you're more difficult on them. You think they're never ready, and you don't want people to say you're favoritism them. So I did to my brother, and etc. So he said, do you mind if I test him? He said, I see him move. He looks strong. He's good. I said, I don't mind. I'd be honest. So I asked my son, Scott, I said, Scott, the professor wants to test you. And he got all nerved up. He said, boy, you think I'm ready to get tested by the professor? So I ain't worked on it about a year. He said, well, you tell him if you give me 3 days to work out with you? So I said, Professor, can he test him in about 3 days? He said, yeah. How long are you going to be? I said, it's going to be another couple of weeks. Just take as long as you want. So I studied my son about 4 days, and he said, I'm ready. And the professor gave him a test. It took about a 3-hour test, 3.5-hour test, and he did Carter and throws and several man attack and some bow Carters and worked with the size and stuff. And the professor was impressed and gave him his black belt, and we got that on video. I got mine. Really? I got a 9th degree off of him at that time, and that was in 85, I guess. That's on video. And so it can't be, debated whether I got it or not. It's on video. My son got his on video. And we got some still shots of it and stuff. And at that time, the professor wanted me to take over his federation, and I came back to the States, and things happened. He soon after that passed away, and I didn't get to see him anymore. But he wanted me to get in touch with Nick. He wanted Nick and I to take over his federation and be the heir to his Kenpo Federation when he passed on.
Tell me, who were some of the other individuals that were involved around that time? Again, there are different people that have mentioned Bill Chun. Sam Alana Kaloha is mentioning that he had trained with Chow. Walter Godine and people of those nature. Who were some of the people that you had met in your journeys to the different dojos that you remember?
Like I say, when Nick and I were out in Hawaii, the only people we ever see trained with him was us. We didn't see anybody else. He didn't have any students. But all the names that you mentioned are familiar, and I know some of them personally. And they did train with him. I don't have personal knowledge, but I did talk to Professor Chow, and I know Daniel Pai trained on him. I know Ed Parker was a student, and he was very fond of Ed Parker. I think he was a little upset with Ed when Ed left for the United States, but later he came to grips with himself and realized that Mr. Parker brought Kempo into the world after that, because Honolulu was across the ocean, and until Ed Parker came and started teaching the movie stars and Elvis Presley, and he taught Steve McQueen, he taught a bunch of the movie stars, and he's the one. He finally came to grips with himself, and he mentioned to me and Nick the last time I was there, he said Ed done real well, and I am proud of him, and I'm proud that he passed on my teachings to people in the United States. He always felt that Hawaii was never the United. He was glad it became part of the United States, but it was to the old ways that it used to be not the United States. So he said, I'm glad he brought it to the mainland, and I'm very happy with him. So, and I had seen Ed Parker after, and I told Ed Parker what Professor said, and he was very happy that Professor finally accepted him back into his realm again. So that was very good.
Now, again, you've been really a person who's always been on the forefront of martial arts, as far as, again, it's a very rare opportunity for us to have someone right here in the southeastern Massachusetts area who is trained with such a luminary and has created their own system and their own formulated system that many people know and acknowledge. What does the future hold for you and the art of Kachi and the martial arts in general?
Well, I've been kind of like I guess probably a sleeping dragon in the last few years, and I've had some personal problems in my life, and it's only through the martial arts that I've been able to cope with it. And I've got a school in Florida. I migrated to Florida. I was down there the last 5 years, and I'm back in this area I don't know how long. I'd like to go back and forth because I have some students down in Florida who would like to get me back there. And I want to get going again and start working with some people like Lapham of the Raven Academy, who I've been working with, and he's a good student. He's very dedicated, and I'm kind of particular who I train. But I think the future, I would like to work with some black belts that I've did in the past and teach black belts, and maybe get a school going again in this area and start pushing the word, because we'll pass on, but our teachings will never die. If you have some good students, they'll never die. We'll live forever through our teachings, and that's something the professor once told me, and I really believe that in my heart now, that the time comes that God calls me, that I'll live forever through my teachings. I mean, we live forever through our children and our relatives. I become very fond of my students. I get a special bond, as every instructor does. These students that I'll never forget, and I've had thousands of them. These people, students you always remember. And I have a great deal of admiration for the students who've stayed with me and practiced. And so like I say, when I pass on to the happy hunting ground, so to speak, that I'll always live in their hearts, and I'll live in teachings forever. Because somewhere along the line, as long as there's a world and my students are out there, they'll be teaching things that I've taught them as professors taught me, and some of the other masters that I've been happy to teach, like my grandfather, my uncle who started me off, etc. So I'll always be happy and obligated and very pleased with that.
Excellent. Well, I'll tell you, perpetuating the art of Kachi, again, through the martial arts. This is Joe Rebelo for Martial Arts Today.